No, I mean, because when you're thinking of victims of this awful world, you think of Michelle Obama and how terrible we've all been to her. This woman is a one-woman destitution derby. Every time we check in on her at her podcast, she is feeling sorry for herself. She is criticizing Barack Obama or this country. She never has a positive word to say about.
Came off a junket. I think you remember, Megyn. She went to Berlin. A private leftist group asked her to speak, and it was for $750,000 for 60 minutes. It worked out to about $12,000 a minute. And it was very funny about her because I only bring this up because in that interview, I think you remember, she was making fun of capitalism. She said it's supposed to trickle down, but it doesn't even trickle down now. And I'm thinking, you just made $12,500 a minute. And you know what, Michelle? You were asked to speak on DEI, but you didn't speak on E. You only spoke on D.
Under the spotlight and behind the polished speeches, the Michelle Obama image just collapsed. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson didn't hold back at all. They delivered a harsh takedown that tore through her picture-perfect story. From the staged emotions to the luxury lifestyle masked as humble living, they exposed it all. This wasn't just simple criticism. It was a total breakdown of the brand America was told to admire. If you believed Michelle was beyond criticism, get ready, the mask just came off, and it's falling fast.
J6 to right that ship. Enter Michelle Obama. All the speculation about whether Biden can make it, and he got lost even at the last event. He was wandering around on the stage when he made his January 6th remarks. Jill Biden had to save him. Enter Michelle Obama, who sits down on this popular podcast, though I've never heard of it, but apparently he's popular. With this guy, she has nothing to promote. She has no book, she has no event, so that means she called them and said, I have something to say. And she very clearly has something to say.
Tucker or one, they say these things that aren't true, whether it's Michelle Obama talking about black lives being indiscriminately, almost daily killed on the street, or Andrew Cuomo with the worst record about the virus and then bragging as if it was the best, because there is no media as we used to know it. NBC, ABC, the network news, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, NPR, they're fused with the progressive movement in general in the Democratic Party.
If you're liking this video, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon. Michelle Obama's someone who turned her fashion in the White House into a statement, yet somehow left behind a legacy built more on bestsellers than bold actions. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson looked at this carefully crafted media figure and turned it into a full-blown roast. Behind the magazine covers, talk show dance moments, and selective outrage is one of the most overpraised political names of the last 20 years, and the takedown didn't start slow. It kicked off with full force, aimed straight at the PR myth she's wrapped in.
Her speech was diversity and inclusion, but why didn't you put equity in there? Because it's pretty unequal. For you to get $12,500, which is more than most people in the world make in an entire year, you made in a minute. So they have this bad habit, the Obamas, that every time there's a social justice question, whether it was George Floyd or economic downturn, they appear. Sometimes they appear from Kalorama, sometimes from Martha's Vineyard, sometimes from the new Hawaii mansion, sometimes from their old Chicago gigs. But they come out and they lecture the country on its illiberal tendencies.
Megyn Kelly didn't waste a second pulling off the icon label. She jumped straight into calling out the strange idea that Michelle Obama's fame somehow means she's an expert. Wearing nice clothes and giving uplifting speeches doesn't make you a leader, it makes you a product. And Michelle has spent years selling that product like a polished mascot, always smiling for the camera, but avoiding anything truly meaningful. She's been shaped, sold, and styled into this picture of grace and elegance. But take away the shine, and what's left is a bitter speech in high-end heels.
She never has a positive word to say about anything. And the latest example was when she went on this other guy's podcast, Jay Shetty. She goes and sits down with him, and he asks her, what are you afraid of? And she starts off by saying, well, it's not, my fears aren't for me. You know, I think about the streets. My fears aren't for me.
Well, in this current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants.
I mean, I travel in a 4-car motorcade.
Victor Davis Hanson took over the second round of the roast by pointing out Michelle Obama's ongoing victim mindset. Here's someone who took luxury vacations, lived in the most powerful home in the country without paying a cent, and left with a massive media empire. And still, somehow, she keeps acting like the country owes her something. After a while, using the oppression angle while producing Netflix shows stops feeling powerful and starts coming off as tone-deaf.
After all, I'm Michelle Obama. And she actually says this. And then she says, but, I worry for my girls because, not that much because they are sort of recognizable, but I'm worried about them.
So it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are somewhat
Megyn couldn't resist pointing out the carefully managed double standards. Michelle says she dislikes politics, yet jumps at every chance to turn social issues into a spotlight moment. She claims she's just like the average person while living in a $12 million estate in Martha's Vineyard. It's like trying to act relatable while broadcasting from a throne. And somehow, the media swallows it whole like it's the absolute truth.
Actually said, because I think he had the vision of splicing her in. And you almost couldn't believe them. It was like, I think you might need to go back and check that. There's no way that must have come from some other parody. But no, time and time again, it was her exact words. She's even more miserable than we portrayed her.
Even more, and since then, I can't wait to see how this is received because I think it's another banger. But she did that podcast recently where she said, I think you talked about.
Then came the biggest trick of all, the shift from First Lady to pop culture. St. Victor called out the irony of someone who often complained about division in politics, yet spent 8 years dismissing every opposing view as unworthy of her Ivy League smarts. If being self-important were a sport, Michelle Obama would have gold medals and her own cereal box. She could take a simple story about eating veggies and turn it into a dramatic moment of struggle. This is someone who made school carrots feel like a national crisis. And while kids were forced to eat tasteless tofu patties, Michelle was likely enjoying chef-made meals behind the curtain. Her food campaign felt less like a public mission and more like a well-produced act of moral branding, loud, useless, and designed for headlines.
Here she is talking about it. If it were me, I would say something nice about him. I would say he's just so charming. It was meant to be. I knew he could heal the earth in the way he did. There was only one person who could do it, and it was my husband, Barack Obama, whatever. Then she gets on to talking a little bit about him personally, and this is how that sounded. About 18.
When a girlfriend comes to visit, it's usually like, you gotta stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
So much
2
time to come
days.
to in.
Victor wasn't about to ignore the education issue either. He pointed out how Michelle always claimed to fight for kids while sending her own to top-tier private schools, far away from the chaos of the public system. And when parents started pushing back on what their kids were being taught, guess who went silent? The same woman who said education was her passion. Turns out that passion disappears right around the time a new podcast drops or a magazine cover hits newsstands. Megyn followed up by calling out Michelle's need to always be in the spotlight. The only thing we haven't seen Michelle Obama do is take real responsibility for the division she helped stir up. While wearing the mask of moral authority, Victor then took aim at the myth of her legacy. Michelle has been painted as a once-in-a-generation icon, a national gem whose influence can't be measured. But let's be honest, the biggest thing she left behind is a wave of Instagram captions that read like recycled campaign lines. And while her memoir collects dust on coffee tables across the country, her real legacy is turning every move into a standing ovation. Actual change. Not much. But matching outfits with a political message. Flawless.
So they have this bad habit, the Obamas, that every time there's a social justice question, whether it was George Floyd or economic downturn, they appear. Sometimes they appear from Kalorama, sometimes from Martha's Vineyard, sometimes from the new Hawaii mansion, sometimes from their old Chicago gigs. But they come out and they lecture the country on its illiberal
Megyn went even further, digging into the carefully staged act of Michelle's so-called humility. This is someone who constantly says she never asked for fame while collecting every check and chasing every spotlight. She says she hates attention, then rolls out another tour, another book, or a new streaming deal. Michelle's exit from public life has lasted longer than most presidents' terms and is more scripted than a Super Bowl halftime show. Victor then exposed the real trick: how Michelle stays politically powerful without ever officially running for anything. It's the most subtle power grab in recent memory. Always around, always shaping opinions, but never taking full responsibility. Megyn didn't hold back. She said, "Michelle's popularity isn't built on bravery, it's built on branding. Every public moment is crafted to pull at emotions, a bit of sadness, a dose of pride, all blended into a carefully edited version of history."
Here she is interviewing Dr. Sharon Malone, perhaps better known as former Attorney General Eric Holder's wife. And therein lies the problem, as these two ladies, married to two very famous men, are pissed that they are not the alpha in terms of popularity and recognition.
She's less of a leader and more of a brand built around lifestyle vibes. And somewhere along the way, people stopped asking what she's actually accomplished. Besides being really skilled at collecting praise, Victor delivered a sharp take of Michelle's constant moral preaching. She always talks about the nation's soul, values, and honor, but when it comes to calling out problems on her own side, she goes completely silent. Apparently, speaking truth to power only counts when the power belongs to your opponents. The double standard is so thick, you could bottle it and sell it like syrup. Megyn also took aim at the protective shield the media wraps around Michelle. Any form of critique is treated like a personal attack. Any opposing view is dismissed as hate. Her public image is guarded like royalty, with commentators and reporters too scared to offer anything but praise. Michelle is the only public figure who can recycle tired slogans and still get cheered for being bold. Boldness, in her case, means wearing shoes in a slightly edgy color and calling it a statement.
It's worse than Watergate because the President of the United States knew that he didn't have the intelligence to suggest that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. He thought that narrative would have worked in the election. It didn't. Donald Trump, I think, surprised to himself, was elected. So here you have a lame duck president trying to destroy the incoming president. He essentially did. There was no reason for Clapper or Brennan, or in the case of the FBI, to tell Barack Obama there is signs of Russian collusion. He gave the game away. He was praising.
Victor wrapped it up by saying Michelle Obama might go down as the most celebrated underachiever in recent political history. A first lady who came in with huge potential and left with a book deal, a podcast, and a non-stop story about being misunderstood. While real leaders were dealing with tough policies and public pressure, Michelle was busy writing poems about her emotions and giving TED Talks about the struggle of being recognized at Target. And Megyn's final jab hit hard. This roast wasn't just personal, it was precise. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson didn't just poke fun at the Michelle Obama myth, they tore it down piece by piece, smile by smile, speech by speech. And somehow, there's still more ground to cover. Because when your entire image is built on polished contradictions, there's always another mask to pull off, another viral quote to question, and another overhyped appearance to break down for what it truly is. And that's exactly where this roast is heading next.
Cherry-picked 4 or 5 other analysts and then presented a false picture to Barack Obama. Or did he? Or did Barack Obama request that he do that? It'll be he said. Then we come to James Clapper. He was sitting at this meeting in December of 2016 where he gave a false assessment and he misrepresented.
Megyn and Victor made it brutally obvious. Michelle Obama's biggest talent wasn't in serving the public, it was mastering the art of self-promotion. She didn't step out of the spotlight. She built a bigger one. Just when people began to move on, she popped back up in another soft focus interview, packed with dramatic pauses, recycled memories, and just enough trendy talk to stay above any real criticism. Like a balloon of carefully managed outrage, she's locked into a role where the weight of that designer moral leadership jacket is apparently too heavy for the rest of us to grasp. She doesn't speak to explain, she speaks to go viral. And somehow, it works. She's made discomfort her brand, and turned victimhood into a product launch. Victor, always ready to pop the bubble, wasn't about to let this fantasy of self-sacrifice slide by.
Gave mixed messages. They kind of told one person, we want an open convention. The other is that Kamala should be. They didn't know who was going to win for 72 hours is what I'm getting at. And they were trying and trying. I think their heart said they wanted a black woman that they thought they could control in the same fashion they control a demented white male like Biden, but they weren't sure about it.
Michelle talks about her time in the White House like it was some painful duty she bravely accepted, like she was forced into a life of luxury, private jets, designer dresses, and global fame against her will. You'd think she spent 8 years in isolation instead of living in the most powerful mansion on earth with a glam team and the world watching. Her memoir tour made it sound like therapy sessions disguised as storytelling. Then came the final roast, the idea that Michelle is real. Megyn broke down the joke behind it all. How can someone so carefully staged, so image-controlled, still sell herself as unfiltered and honest? Her version of raw is anything but. It's fake relatability wrapped in a $4,000 coat. Michelle's style of being authentic feels more like a scripted reality show with a small army of producers. It's smooth, it's staged, and it's almost a parody of itself.
Many people don't know. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to play.
Michelle Obama, listen to this.
And at this phase of my life, I'm in therapy right now because I'm transitioning. I'm 60 years old. I've finished a really hard thing in my life with my family intact. I'm an empty nester. My girls are in, they've been launched. And now for the first time, as I've said before, every choice that I'm making is completely mine.
Iktar closed the show by drawing a hard line between what looks good and what actually matters. Michelle Obama might be hugely popular, but when it comes to real results, there's not much to show. Her speeches sound nice, but say little. Her books are long but leave no lasting message. She's famous around the world, yet never holds her own side accountable. She's more of a headline than a legacy, a big name with no big changes behind it. So the curtain falls not on a leader's journey, but on a perfectly managed performance. Michelle will always have fans, followers, and another angle to explain how nobody ever really understood her. But what she won't have is what counts in public service, results that last longer than applause. And with that, Megyn and Victor stepped off the stage, leaving the myth in pieces. The spotlight still follows Michelle, but now it shows the cracks. Because once you strip away the fame and polish, what's left isn't a leader. It's a brand carefully built, brilliantly sold, and completely empty. That echo you hear,